Next item, please.
Special reports, middle school music offerings.
We have Mr. Dennison, Mr. Rummel, Mr. DeClolo here. This is part of a board request that, for this presentation.
Good evening. I am going to have the administrators who are going to be part of this presentation introduce themselves briefly.
I'm Samir Daklala. I'm the assistant principal at Laurie Middle School.
Andy Dennison, the principal at Bryant Middle School.
Mark Rummel, interim principal, Smith Middle School.
I also know that we have some of our wonderful music teachers in the audience tonight, as well as our music resource teacher, Lisa Meyer, who does an outstanding job leading the department and organizing a lot of activities in addition to the professional learning for the group. So we appreciate everyone taking the time after a very long day to participate in the presentation. So we highly value the offerings in our music department and all of our staff, and everything that our music department does is well aligned to our strategic plan. So as we look at teaching and learning, we look at career development and also the development of positive student relationships. We have many students who are highly motivated by their involvement in music, whether it's vocal music or playing an instrument, whether it be a brass or a wind instrument, a string, or piano. And so we know that these offer an important outlet for our students and also help stimulate their creativity. The second focus area, talent development, has to do with staff performance and then effective recruitment. So the music department, again, participate in interviews for music teachers as openings occur and truly look for the best and most highly qualified staff to fill any of the openings or vacancies that we might have. And then the third area, which is stakeholder engagement, involves district and school communication, parent involvement, and community partnership. And our music department, with all of their work, kind of encompasses work in all of those areas as there is ongoing communication regarding the needs of the music department. We are working hard to increase, the offerings in our middle school leading into high school. And we also know there's a lot of parent interest and support for offerings in the music department. Lisa and her team also work on an ongoing basis to bring in community partnerships, whether it's the Detroit Symphony Orchestra or some of the other musical groups that come to the schools. So I'm going to turn this over to Samir Daklala, who's going to take us through the next few slides.
Yes, so the music offerings that we have, 6th grade music connections, it's an introductory course. Instrumental, orchestra and band, vocal music. It varies from school to school. Other offerings include drums, guitar, and jazz. You all have probably heard of the wonderful drum ensemble that we have at Maples, right? Amazing. Based on student choice and interest, and is based on parental support. Okay, I think who's doing this?
This one here. So here are the offerings at all of the middle schools by grade, and you can see that there is a large variety and there's some variation among schools. In the course selection process, our students indicate interest and the desire to take music or art or coding or STEM or any one of the other non-core electives that are offered to students. There's a large variety that students choose from, and then the staffing for all of the positions is arranged by the school. So you can see that there is some variation across schools, but obviously there are musical offerings in all of our middle schools.
All right, I'm going to deviate from the slide here, of course, since I've been around a long time, I can do that. So, so when I go into a music classroom and watch what happens in a classroom by the band director, I really think back to what it looks like in a regular classroom. So in a regular classroom, you watch a teacher that teaches a whole group lesson. At some point, they break that whole group into small groups, and they drill down a little bit more. Maybe they reteach things to clarify things, and then they drill down even further and they pull group kids one-to-one. If you go into a band room or an orchestra room, classroom, you'll see the same thing happening there. You'll see a teacher that's working with a whole group, an ensemble. They practice for a little bit, and then they may take the trumpet section and they break it down into a small group. And they work with that small group, and then they may go, you know what, I need to get a little bit we need to go one-on-one here a little bit, so I'll have some kids play one-to-one. And they bring it all back together. But I've always been impressed with our music teachers because they do every day what we hope that happens in other classrooms too. So it can be a quite amazing experience for students. So in our middle school classrooms, we obviously would like a highly qualified instrumental or orchestra teacher in every position. We also explore, they also explore recruitment and retention of students. So my job as a principal when I go into meet with fifth graders is to talk about all the offerings that we have in middle school. One thing that I really kind of impress upon them is that we want them to continue with staying in band and staying in orchestra. That also is a responsibility of the teacher. So the teachers will go into our feeder schools and do the same thing there, but not only will they try to bring kids in from the feeder schools, but they also continue to try to keep those kids that they currently have in their programs. Again, recruiting kids, we have assemblies, so each school, like so the high schools, Dearborn High has sent kids in the past to Bryant to talk about the offerings that they have at the high school. We have also sent kids and the band director at Bryant to our feeder schools to do the same thing. So kids know what they have the opportunity to experience when they get to that next level. Of course, performances are important. You know, if you're an athlete, you don't want to just practice. You know, performing for parents and kids, for classmates. At least a couple times a year is really important. Solo and ensemble, so that's where kids get a chance to practice and prepare a piece individually and then play before a judge and get graded on that. Band and orchestra festivals, our kids at Bryant just went and came back and they hadn't done that in a couple of years. So Mr. Quetchen was a little bit nervous about that, but that worked out really well. And then again, as we progress, you know, we try to find, principals are trying to find, and band directors are trying to find ways to maybe think outside the box. So maybe it's not band, maybe it's not orchestra, maybe it's a drum line or something like that, where we can think a little bit differently to promote music, instrumental, and orchestra options in middle school. So how will our programs thrive? We believe that, again, it goes back to the teacher that has a vision and a passion to teach, energy, because a band director has to have a little bit of energy. Again, the recruiting part is very important as well. So whether it's me as the administrator or the band director, recruiting kids, keeping them engaged and keeping them in the program is vital to keeping our programs you know, strong. And then again, providing opportunities to perform. You know, a couple times a year at Bryant they perform, and then any other opportunities outside of that. The jazz band has performed in the past at our parent nights. The kids have marched in parades. So it's very important to have those kids perform just so they can showcase their abilities. And then lastly, I think it's really important that as we continue to grow our program or you know, commit to it, that we have a strong elementary program that feeds into the middle school, that feeds into the high school. So we work together to make that happen. Do I have the next one too? All right. So some of our challenges, obviously our current, our student interest. You know, it seems like kids come to middle school and they have so many choices, but with our other extended core electives that sometimes they kind of forget about some of the things that they've done successfully in band and orchestra. My job as a principal when I go to see kids in the next couple weeks at Lindbergh, River Oaks, Howard, and Hague is to really promote instrumental music and orchestra. And I do that. I think it's very important. Some of our other challenges are, you know, having families that maybe the offerings that we have musically don't really align with what's going on in their families, with their values and things. So that's a challenge. I think that we've really experienced as, you know, the casualty of the pandemic. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to watch a band director teach virtually, next to impossible. So that was really hard. I think that if I look at our numbers at Bryant, they've gone down because of that. You know, how do you teach somebody to play the trumpet when they're sitting in another area and they're trying to teach it virtually? It can be done, but certainly it's easier to do it in person. And then we have sometimes where kids have the academic needs. They need to maybe be in a math lab or a reading lab, or they need to be in a more of an academic course, and they have to, because we don't have endless amount of extended core offerings, they have some choices made for them. And then, of course, we do have limited hours in the day. At Bryant, we tried to have, when Mr. Garrison was there, tried to have the offering during jazz band during the day. We weren't able to do it, so those kids came in every day. Right, Maddox?
Yep.
Maddox was one of our former kids that was always there. Had a great jazz band because the kids came and committed to that. So again, though, we have 4 core classes and only 2 electives, and sometimes there's not enough opportunity for all the kids. So those are some of our challenges. Mark?
So as Andy, or Mr. Dennison spoke to, there are some challenges, and we're trying to meet these challenges. The numbers have declined over the years, and traditionally we would offer band, orchestra, and vocal music. And our parental support would be both a positive and a challenge. In the cases where the parents were very supportive of the fine arts, their students were not interested for many reasons, including more opportunities to do other things they want to explore. In other circumstances, students may be somewhat interested, but their parents weren't very supportive of it. But regardless, the numbers were not moving in the right direction. So to respond to this, we've been trying to put some things in place, but we're also trying to step those efforts up to meet that. When it comes to our feeder, middle school is a transitional period, and a lot of students get exposure in their elementary school years every day to every elective. So when it comes time to make those choices, it's hard for them to decide where they want to go, and a lot of times the band and orchestra is part of what goes. So working with building the relationships really with our high schools and our elementary schools is very, very important. And having these feeder activities, whether it be the middle school coming to the elementary school to perform, or the high schools doing the same thing the other way, we've realized that's very, very important. And utilizing these resources that we have at the high school when it comes to the different opportunities that are out there are also something that we're really tapping into more than in the past. But also, instead of offering more traditional approaches to music, we're trying to really follow student interest. And as mentioned previously, like Maples was the great example with Ms. Prowse, how she followed student interest to really build a very strong drumming program. That's the same thing that we're all looking into at this point in time, whether it be the drums or more contemporary music, whether guitars class, jazz band, vocal music, but all these things are really student-based, and giving the teachers the autonomy to build the relationships with their students, but also follow whatever they feel the students would be most interested in to continue the program going is really what we're trying to do to build it and make it strong. So we're always open to recommendations to increase the participation in these classes, and we're wondering if there's any questions at this point.
Trustee Pitchley? Okay, well, a lot of things come to mind. I had 2 kids who went through the band program. One went through middle school and then had competing interests come high school. One of the things I've noticed, I was a City Beautiful commissioner for many years, and we did have a lot of the middle school and I think high school from Bryant and Dearborn High who participated with the bands from the elementary when we did parades, cleanup parades in the streets on several occasions, which impressed the parents in the community, actually. It made a big impression on them by being able to see this display of cross representation amongst the school community. one of the things we've talked about, because we know we've struggled with this for years, and many of the issues were multi-tiered. We had parents who didn't want to invest the money in purchasing instruments when it got to a certain grade level. We had, and would have struggled with that. We had students who academically had to give up on their pursuit because they had to concentrate in that area. I was wondering, we've talked about it in the past, whether we could have a more across the city, a citywide kind of organization of, elementary level band offerings and then middle school, where rather than individual school, in order to at least get the introduction out there in a way that was more, less competing and more cooperative, to at least get that introduction level until they get to the high school level. And maybe we should concentrate on going that route for those schools that don't necessarily have the same attention to the program as some other ones do, but we could be sure everybody got an opportunity to be exposed to it. The other question would be, do our students get an opportunity to see what happens once you're out of high school? Do they get to go? We have a Dearborn Symphony, which is a very strong program here in Dearborn. We have Henry Ford College with all kinds of programs with their music department. Do we have the opportunity to get these kids introduced to some of the performances and or introduced to what happens once you are out of the school environment and what else you can do moving forward, so that it might encourage them to maintain that interest throughout their school career? Those are a couple of the thoughts I had.
Speaking as a team of administrators putting this together, that was one of the points that we also thought was worth exploring, is getting like a more holistic approach for multiple schools, so that way if the interest is a little here, and here, you could get one group together to where students would have those opportunities. So I think that is definitely worth exploring, and I think the team thought the same thing. When it comes to post-secondary options, before pandemic, of course, it was a lot easier. We had trips to the Dearborn Symphony Orchestra, or there's the Detroit Symphony Orchestra comes into the school and gives a small sample of what you can do, and it usually gets the kids really excited. But I think the idea of post-secondary things that students can do, not as professionals, right, like the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, but like you said, being part of Henry Ford College's band or other just club bands, I think is a great idea too, just to see what you can do with it moving forward. Yeah. Hi, Ms. Meyer.
Good evening. I do want to let you know, Trustee Pitchley, that yes, by all means, we do have Henry Ford College comes in with their vocal music and vocal jazz groups, and they visit all of the high schools and have a whole day with all of those high schools.
Right.
So they definitely see what is beyond there. The Dearborn Youth Symphony is available that all of the students are made aware of. Scholarships are offered for that. There are a number of our students who do get scholarships through the Dearborn Symphony in order to pursue private lessons as well. There's opportunities for them to free tickets to be able to go to the symphony, free tickets through Motor City Brass Band, Detroit Chamberwoods and Strings. All of those opportunities are definitely there. So yes, we've tried to make those connections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Muslin?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question about the offerings at different schools. Seems like here we have one school that has no music whatsoever, and one other school has only music connections. Are the offerings totally based on student interest?
We know that as students get older and enter in the secondary schools, that relationships are paramount in terms of being able to build a program and to have continuity. And so you are right, there are some schools that don't have staff in place. And because of that, it's impossible to build those relationships. Students aren't going to sign up if they don't know who's going to teach it. And so I think that, I think it's important for us to make a commitment to state we want to see these programs in place, and we want to have those courses offered incrementally and have that staff in place so that they can begin to build those relationships and they can begin to recruit and build and just have a dynamic program. But it's all based on relationships at that point, and we need to have the staff in place to do that.
So we don't have that offerings because of staff shortage? Or is it
No,
just
the offering is on the sheet,
Okay.
but there is nobody at the school to teach it. And so a student, a seventh grader, is not going to sign up for vocal music if they don't have a staff person in place. I signed up for music because I liked my teachers. That's who I wanted to be with. And I liked my friends. I wanted to all do it together. And so there's a lot of, if you don't have it in place to begin with, it's hard to get it started again. It's not impossible. And I believe that we can incrementally put that back into place. So begin to, do sixth grade one year, sixth and seventh the next.
One thing that I have seen, I think nationally, probably all over the world, is that there might be, is there more interest in music or less interest in music? Is this a national trend that you see with numbers going down as far as their enrollment or interest? Or is this?
Post-COVID, it is nationally.
Okay.
Right, definitely. It's possible to have an ensemble and to perform in an ensemble. That's where the magic happens, when you hear everything fitting together.
Right.
And when you are doing it over Zoom, you're all muted. You don't hear
Well-
anything. So there are, nationally, yes, there are a drop in participation numbers.
Yeah, I hope that comes back now that we're post-pandemic.
And I will say that the music department met 2 months ago and put into place a very concrete plan to do virtual recruitment as well as in-person recruitment. And videos have been made, Zoom calls have been made. We want those teachers' faces in front of those kids. And we want those enthusiastic kids to say, yes, this is fun, this is magnificent, I'm learning a lot, I love doing this. So we do have that in place.
As far as a suggestion that you've requested, as Trustee Petlicoff mentioned, we would like to see those showcased so other parents would be interested in asking for these offerings. I also would love to see more partnerships with organizations such as we have currently with the high school at Fortson. We have the Arab American Orchestra.
Actually, that's district-wide.
Yeah, it is now district-wide, yes. So I would love to see that also at the middle schools, especially for students who speak that tongue. Or even, I've seen them even partner with Detroit schools, and they've had magnificent shows. So those kind of creative ways of getting students into these programs would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Watts?
So you were saying that at the one school that they had a vocal class offering, but there wasn't a teacher to fill that spot?
I was just saying that as an example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we were not offering a class, we weren't offering a class at a school because we didn't have the teacher to fill that class. Is that correct?
There are schools that don't have staff in place. And because they don't have staff in place, I believe the students don't sign up for the course.
Because they want to know who's teaching that
Exactly.
class.
Even though it's offered.
Even though it's offered,
Right.
they won't sign up because they don't know who's teaching it.
Okay.
It's offered, but
There's no interest.
there's not a relationship there or
Right.
somebody in the building.
So I guess on that end, so then what would you, I guess in the ideal world, and I know that you had said 2 months ago that you had videos sent out there trying to, presumably to find teachers to fill those.
No, I'm sorry, the videos were from our current middle schools, making videos of their students and of a recruitment video for the fifth grades to be able to see.
Okay.
And also the high schools did the same for the middle schools.
So ideally, I guess, what would you need to make a robust middle school across citywide?
We would need the board to support and to commit to bringing staff back at the middle school level incrementally. I believe that the way to do it would be in next year offering sixth grade for the schools that don't have those offerings. And it's across, you see the holes. And then the following year, do a sixth and seventh. The following year, do a sixth, seventh, and eighth.
So to be able to grow it starting in sixth grade. Yeah.
Correct.
I agree. I think we definitely need to, post-pandemic, I mean, I think with music especially, I mean, kids are listening to music. So they're musically inclined, but they need somebody to lead them. So,
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Petlicoff?
Can I ask how long it's been since Lori's had? Because on here it appears that there is no, but I remember seeing a band at Lori.
It was disbanded 4 years ago.
Was it 4 years ago? And nobody has expressed an interest from that school community to,
The reasons that it was disbanded were because FTEs were cut. And it was decided to
so
to
that
make
was
the
a
cut in
staff
that
cut
place.
that was
Right.
considered. All
Right.
right, thank you.
Trustee Thorpe?
I'd echo what Trustee Moser was saying, that when we look through the list of choices, you can see that some schools have little to no choice available, and I understand supply and demand, and if there's demand, you'll create the supply, but I also know sometimes if there is supply, demand becomes created. Is there situations where there's some interest, but maybe not enough to say that we need a full-time teacher, but that teacher could be splitting the day between two different buildings?
Yes, definitely, and that's one of the reasons, I think, why the executive directors put into place that the FTEs for music at the middle school level would be coming from the department, so that they don't have to try to make a half-time person. I can take a .2 and put them in sixth grade at a middle school and fill up the rest of their .8 with elementary or with other middle schools. So the puzzle is not quite as big in the department to make a full-time FTE than it is with, if you were to create that at the middle school level.
And I know in previous years we had honors choir, but would there be something like an honors band, honors orchestra, things like that? Mr. Dennison mentions a club that's really rolling at Bryant, where with your two electives, it doesn't have to be band. This can be an extracurricular type thing. Do we have those in place so that if the students really are into music, but they've got other interests as well, they don't have to sacrifice?
We have not put that into place as a district for band or orchestra or jazz band or something like that as an after-school club. There are youth symphonies and youth bands that are offered within the community, but it's not been through the district. That's certainly something that we can look into.
The last question I would have is, you mentioned needing more teachers. Do we also then need more equipment for the students?
Yes, our instrumental equipment is faded and old, and things wear out. And so, yes, actually, if there could be an investment to do that, that would be great. You know that our socioeconomic situation has become more dire in Dearborn. And it has been wonderful that our superintendent has stated he doesn't want anybody denied an opportunity to play because they can't afford an instrument. And so, yes, we have schools that definitely, all schools, need more equipment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Can I say something? I'm sorry. All right, so in response to, there is a limited pot of money, all right? So we are given in the middle school so much money to spend on, let's see here, detention room supervisor, which is really popular, of course. Things like art club, after school, math counts, academic games, chess club, robotics, what did we just have the other night? Our drama club. So all this stuff that we offer kids, eventually we get to the point where we've got to our max. I would love to be able to offer more, because I think we have kids that would be interested in that, but we don't have the funds. And you know, Mason's great. We work with, I'm sorry, Ms. Alibazzi, sorry. And Dr. Malika is great too. They want us to be able to offer these, but at some point, we just can't offer if we can't pay the people to run the clubs. Does that make sense?
And then it comes back again to supply and demand, I would assume.
I bet that if you gave us money to do these offerings, we probably could run things for kids before and after school.
Though I would say that a music program, especially instrumental, I'm assuming is much more expensive than academic games or
Sure.
another program.
And I would say too, that when I was a teacher, you know, I had to carve out of my time, so, you know, you have to, you know, it's kind of like give and take, right? So I had kids that went to orchestra twice a week, and I had kids that went to brass and clarinets and drums, all carved out of my day when the instrumental music teacher was in the building. Now I think we have one person that goes to 10 schools. And it's really more of a whole approach. I think it's kind of like you do the best you can, but are we creating the foundation for our students so we can benefit by that in the middle schools is another question that I think you have to ask too. So.
Couple things I just, oh, go ahead.
No, it's okay, I'll let you go first.
Couple things I just wanted to, okay, I'll get you in just a second. I wanted to add was, I think coming out of the pandemic, what did everyone miss? We missed the opportunity to be together. We missed the opportunity to share. We missed the opportunity to go to performances. So I think that there is a desire out there, but you have to keep doing what you're doing to create the possibilities and to get people to realize, boy, did we miss that. And we need to bring those things back because they do enrich our community in so many ways. And the other thing I have is just a question. I happen to know right now 2 people that have pianos. One is a baby grand and one is an upright that would like to donate them, but they're having a lot of trouble donating them. And I know there's some particulars that go along with donating a piano, so I don't know if there would be interest in that. So if there is, let me know and I will see what I can do about hooking you up with those folks. Okay, thank you. Trustee Barry?
Yes, Mr. Dennison, you said, show me the money and I'll build you the program. I know you're not a gambler, but that would be a good bet. Thank you for your passion. I mean, it's very noticeable. Thank you for what you've been doing over the years. I'm a strong supporter, I've been following you. Dr. Maleka, when I asked for this report, and I'm glad you followed through, we have a representative from each different feeder track. I heard from Mr. Dennison there's a strong relationship between Bryant and Dearborn High, and we see the fruit of that labor. I heard somewhat from Mr. Rummel about the high schools, but I don't know if you'll be able to answer, Mr. Daklola. Is there anybody from Fortson reaching out to the middle schools, recruiting, trying to build that program? I know you're at a bad spot, but I still wanted to hear.
No, definitely. Dan Taylor and Jillian Newton are both the band and orchestra and choral director, and yes, they reach out all the time and do combined concerts and do feeder concerts, and definitely, yes, there are things going on.
So when we asked for this report a few months ago, I heard a lot of my colleagues very, very supportive of the band and moving the future. So yes, please tell us through Dr. Maleko, what is it that you need? Staffing, I like your idea. Let's start with the 6th graders. I heard the word numbers a few times, but there is no numbers on this report. So I have a follow-up, Dr. Maleko, if we can see the numbers before, a couple years before COVID, because we know where they're at now because of COVID. But we keep beating up on band on Zoom. I watched Hamilton on Zoom, and I was blown away. So I know band and instruments, a little different story. But
Right.
Thank you. Very good report. It's a start. It's a start, and I think I can safely say on behalf of all my colleagues, we want to support moving forward. So appreciate this report.
The executive directors and I will be meeting next week.
Okay.
And so they will be getting that report, and they'll certainly forward that to you.
One last question, thank you. One last question to Mr. Almo. You said the team, the administrator, were you talking about the team to put this report together? Or was there a representative from every middle school?
Yeah, the team from the feeders that were part of this report.
Just a report?
Yeah.
So maybe we can expand it to the other 4 middle
Yeah,
schools.
correct. And I know Ms. Aldabaki and I have been working together a lot with Etzel Ford, and I'm very grateful for the great stuff that Etzel Ford is doing with us as a feeder, especially Ms. Brookhuizen. Very, very excellent.
No pun intended, that's music to my ears.
Yeah, right.
Trustee Mosley?
Madam President, thank you. I just want to mention something lastly about interest, student interest. I know we keep saying that, but we have to expose students to music before they're really interested. So whatever we can do to have these offerings at each middle school would be wonderful. I'd love to see that, these offerings at Salina and Lori to be restored, to be in par with other schools. Thank you.
Dr. Maliko?
So I want to thank everyone today, principals, for coming after Monday day and presenting and putting this together. And Ms. Meyer, I saw the great, and I support the music programs heavily. I believe in it, and I've been in her class when I was principal and participated in a lot of the dance. And she trained me well. That may not be my strength, but I always was an eager participant, and she does a great job. And I know we have great music teachers across the district. And I know Mr. McCloskey helped out with the Metro Bureau event, and he was recently at the Foundation Mardi Gras with some of his students, and I've seen Fortson students and others all over. So I think, appreciate the work you're doing. I know pre-pandemic, I had just met, and it was before, I believe it was like January, February, and I think, Ms. Meyer, you may have, with the Arab American Orchestra, we were starting, and then the pandemic hit, because we were going to start a partnership and get everyone together. So we will come back to our team. I can also say last year, we allocated some staffing outside of the formula, additional staffing for music to make sure that the staffing was there. It is a challenge for the principals though, and I can speak to it because I was a middle school principal, and I know because you're balancing your staffing and then you have a combination of balancing, the student requests. But I do agree with getting interest so that maybe if we can, try to get some more students, in the program and then sustain that. And I have seen the power of, getting in the parade and other things, like you said, with these events that do create enthusiasm and then grow the program. So our team will meet and we'll see what we can do outside of the staffing formula and then working together with the music department to create enthusiasm coming out of COVID. I'm also pleased to say, and I know Ms. Meyer coordinates it, but we had the fourth grade symphony trip that we fund every year, and I support every year for all fourth graders. That was put on hold because of COVID, and we're going forward with that this year. So we talked to Mr. Sortrez in transportation to make sure we can get all the buses, and I think the timing is being worked out. So that's just one event, but it's one way to get, students interested. So appreciate everyone presenting and all the comments. We've taken it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Special reports, purchasing, Mr. Thomas Wall and Mr. Mark Andrews.
And Mr. Musson is bringing this up. I just want to, again, thank you for that last conversation. I know my kids personally experienced that program at Smith and Edsel Ford. And a shout out to the Edsel Ford staff that is here today supported too. It did wonders for my kid. It gave him a place to be and a place to really grow in the high school. So I do appreciate that. All right, just a quick presentation. I'm not going to take anywhere half as long because it's not as exciting as that last topic. But purchasing. So I just want to do a quick update on purchasing for you. This is required by the School Aid Act, sections 380, 1267 for construction, and 1274 for regular purchasing. So just know that we have to follow the state guidelines and federal guidelines when we do purchasing for schools. Just have a quick, the link is up on top for the public if they ever want to go back to this and visit this exciting topic. But that's our purchasing policy, which basically is conformed by state law. And I won't go into all the details, but there is a process we have to follow regardless of the dollar value. So anything under 10,000, we have the capability of the purchasing agent to work with the schools on that. And anything from 10,000 just to a little over 23,000, we do informal bidding and quoting. And anything over the $23,000 threshold, we are going through a formal bid process. So I won't get into all these, but there's 17 items here. This is our guidelines, which is underneath the board policy, and it addresses all these items when we look at purchasing. So you can see there's quite a bit in there. Anything we do kind of follows these guidelines, and it's several pages long, like 6 or 7 pages. And this is open to the public, so if a vendor looks at it, they know what process we're gonna follow and what we're gonna ask for. There's appeal process in here, there's emergency purchases. So for example, if a boiler goes down in the middle of winter, we don't have time to go through, a 3 to 4 week process for bidding out a boiler. You have given the authority to the superintendent as part of our board policy, an emergency situation, he can go forward and we bring it to the next board meeting for ratification. So are there safeguards in there that everybody knows what's gonna happen and the approval process is following, because we are dealing with public funds. So just some of the data on this, so formal bids, just for last year, we did 30 formal bids and 165 informal bids. So those informal bids are above that 10,000 threshold, and the 30 are over that $23,000 threshold. And you see it every time it's a formal bid because it requires board approval, anything over that 23,000. So every time you're seeing it on an agenda item, it's usually because it's a formal bid and had to be there. In addition, outside of that, we have done 1,600 purchase orders in last year. That's a lot of activity to keep organized. Blanket POs, so a blanket PO is a little more confusing. For example, we would have a blanket PO for bathroom repairs. Since we have such a large district, those numbers can grow quite quickly. At the beginning of the year, we don't necessarily know what's gonna be needed. So we do a blanket purchase order for a certain dollar value so we can do those small purchases throughout the year. On occasion, like on today's agenda, our bathrooms are need more repair this year, so you see an amendment to increase that dollar value as we still continue those small purchases throughout the year. And that amendment will get us through the end of the year for these small purchases. So that's why you see blanket POs sometimes on the board agenda at the beginning of the year and occasionally during the year for amendments. In addition to that, we have what we call USF funding. That is the fees that people pay on their cell bills, their telephone bills, and cable bills. There's what we call universal service funding. They give some money back to us that deals with items that deal with the network and fiber and communications like that. So anytime we do a USF funding, we get 90% of that bid back. So you'll see that in a couple of future agendas as we go through our network, revitalization, that you'll see that we have to actually do the outlay to begin with, which requires board approval, but we'll get 90% of that funding back at a later date. It's a very formalized process, and that does go through a formal bidding process. And on the board approvals, you had 118 board approvals last year. So you're a busy board, because we're so large, you'll see a lot of those purchases coming because of the dollar value that we deal with on that basis. So this is just a quick look at the state lines on the left-hand side that I was referring to for numbers. In addition, we also have to follow the federal rules on the right-hand side. The federal rules is 10,000 and less is a micro purchase, which is, at the discretion of the district. Over 250,000 requires formal board approval. But since the state number is lower, we have to follow both, so we follow the state rules more often than we ever follow the federal rule. And on cooperative bidding, that was a question that's come up in the board in the past. Why do we do cooperative purchasing? These are organizations that are usually nonprofit that work with all the governmental agencies in a certain state or a certain region. They've already gone through the bidding process, looked at it, vetted them, and making sure they were their lowest responsible bidder, and they share with us so we can go through a much quicker process. Because anytime a formal bid gets done, that's anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to complete. And so that takes a lot of time and staff time to develop those. So if we've already know someone's already bidded that, and it's been consistent at a lower price, it saves us time and administrative time, and we can take that bid knowing it's a good bid. On occasion, we still will go through our formal bid process, especially if we have time, just to see if there's a better price, and they take the lower of the two. I think that is it. That was a quick presentation, as I normally like to do. Any questions?
I don't see any.
And I'm
Thank you
always
so
open to
much.
questions if you want to come back or call me on the side too. All right, thank you, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And once again, Tom, thank you and your team for all the hard work you do, and you make us proud.